They told me you're on your own financially. Then a week later, they handed my sister condo keys, 2 bedrooms, a lake view, a ribbon on the door. No one asked if I had rent money. No one noticed when I disappeared. 4 years later, my name hit Forbes and my research changed everything. That's when my mother showed up, uninvited, smiling like she owned the place. She said she'd come to celebrate, but in her purse was a piece of paper that made my blood freeze. I thought she wanted forgiveness. She wanted something else, something worth exactly $1 million. My name is Linda Hayes. I grew up in a house that looked normal from the street, 2 stories, trimmed hedges, the kind of place where neighbors waved from driveways and said, "Nice family." Inside, though, it was like living in a play where I was the understudy who never went on stage. My mother, Margaret, ran the house like a director with one favorite actress, my sister Sophie. Every conversation circled back to her. Every photo on the mantel had her in the center. If I was in the frame at all, it was by accident. Sophie sparkled. She was the dancer, the baby girl, the one Mom called her miracle. When she performed, Dad stood up to record it. When I brought home straight A's, he didn't even look up from his newspaper. Mom would say, "We don't brag in this house, Linda," but somehow bragging about Sophie was fine. At 16, Sophie got a car with a red bow. I got her old bus pass and a reminder to be grateful. Dinner was the same script every night, Dad talking about work, Mom praising Sophie, me clearing plates while pretending not to care. The smell of lemon detergent became the scent of invisibility. I told myself I was strong, that being invisible meant I was independent. But even then, I knew it was a lie. When I got into college, I rehearsed my request for help with tuition for days. I waited until Dad was relaxed. Newspaper folded, TV humming low. "I'll need help with room and board," I said carefully. Mom didn't look up from her laundry basket. Dad just muttered, "You've got scholarships, right? You're 18 now, you'll manage." Those words sliced deeper than they sounded. You're on your own financially. That night, I filled out loan forms under a dim lamp while Sophie slept peacefully across the hall. I wasn't angry, just hollow. Like a door had quietly closed and no one noticed I was still standing outside. College was a blur of labs, ramen, and side jobs. I sent short texts home at first, still hoping someone might ask if I was okay. They didn't. The family group chat kept glowing Sophie's new dresses, Sophie's vacations, Sophie's engagement to a guy with perfect hair. I learned to mute the notifications. When Dr. Elena Cruz took me on as her research assistant, I started to feel something new seen. She called me meticulous. She said, "You don't just follow instructions you think." No one had ever said that to me before. She introduced me to the quiet rhythm of the lab, the hum of centrifuges, the clean scent of ethanol, the small thrill when an experiment worked. It was the first place that didn't demand I shrink myself. By the time I graduated, I'd built a wall of calm around me. I'd stopped waiting for approval, stopped asking for help. I believed I was free from them until one photo shattered that illusion. Sophie, again. A condo key in her hand, a lake glimmering behind her. Caption, "Happy 21st, baby girl." And in the background, a red bow, the same shade as the one she got on her car years ago. That's when I realized some gifts don't stop hurting, they just change shape. The photo burned through me more quietly than anger ever could. I didn't throw my phone, didn't cry, didn't call. I just stared at that red ribbon until the screen dimmed. It was the same shade as every time they'd celebrated Sophie, like the color itself had been reserved for her victories. 2 bedrooms, granite counters, lake view. The post said it all. There wasn't a single message asking, "How are you, Linda?" I set the phone down face first and returned to my notes, recording polymer dissolution rates like nothing had happened. But something did. Something final. After that, home stopped being a place and became a concept I'd outgrown. My scholarship covered rent in a campus basement apartment, thin walls, humming pipes, the faint smell of instant noodles that never left. I spent nights in the lab chasing numbers instead of sleep. Dr. Cruz would check in on me, asking if I ever took a break. I'd shrug. "Breaks are expensive." She'd smile sadly, as if she knew that sentence meant more than I said. The next semester, she called me into her office. Warm, light books stacked in gentle chaos, a half-finished cup of coffee beside her laptop. "Linda," she said, "you're different lately. Not in a bad way, just focused. Whatever you're chasing, I hope it's for you, not against someone else. I wanted to say it was both, but I just nodded. When Stanford offered me a fully funded PhD position, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't even tell Sophie. I packed my car, a dented Honda trunk, full of notebooks and wilted plants, and drove until the highway signs said California. Somewhere between mile markers, I stopped feeling like a daughter. I was something else now. Stanford was a different planet. People there didn't measure worth in attention, they measured it in discovery. I belonged to the midnight shift of the lab pipettes, playlists, fluorescent lights. For once, silence didn't mean neglect, it meant focus. Every now and then, my phone would light up with the family chat photos from holidays I wasn't invited to, Sophie's engagement ring, Mom's captions about my beautiful girls. I'd scroll through them with the detached curiosity of a stranger. Then one day a text came just to me. Heard you finished your PhD. Congratulations. Maybe now you can help your sister with her business idea. No question mark after the congratulations. Just expectation. I deleted the message and blocked the number. Years passed. My work turned into a startup, a small biotech company built from long nights and stubborn faith. Mark Reynolds came aboard as a partner, sharp, kind, grounded. We built something that mattered, something real. When investors called, they called me Dr. Hayes. The same name that once meant nothing in my family group chat now opened doors in places they'd never stepped foot in. Success came quietly at first, then all at once. Funding rounds, headlines, an acquisition offer, and that's when the noise found me again. A friend texted, "Your mom just posted about you." I opened Facebook for the first time in years. There it was, Margaret Hayes smiling proudly beside Sophie. So proud of my daughters. One runs a business, the other just made a scientific breakthrough. A mother's sacrifices are finally worth it. Sacrifices. The word sat like lead in my throat. I stared at that post until the edges blurred. It wasn't just a lie, it was a rewrite. She'd erased years of silence, replaced them with gratitude she never gave. For a moment, I wanted to comment, to remind her I hadn't spoken to her in nearly a decade. But then I realized she didn't post that for me. She posted it for herself. So I did nothing. And that's what drove her crazy. Weeks later, my assistant buzzed in through the intercom. "Linda, there's a woman here asking for you, says she's family." I froze. Family. The word I'd buried years ago. "Send her in," I said, voice steady but heartbeat sharp. And when the door opened, I smelled her perfume before I saw her vanilla and guilt, both too sweet to be real. She looked exactly as I remembered, immaculate hair pearls, a confidence that filled any room before she spoke. "Linda," she said, arms wide like this, was a reunion, not an intrusion. I stood up slowly. "Mom." She glanced around my office, taking inventory, glass walls, framed patents, the hum of success. "So this is where all the genius happens," she said. "You didn't even tell us." Imagine my surprise reading about my own daughter in Forbes. I forced a smile. "You could have called." "Oh, I did," she said lightly. "You changed your number. I figured you were just busy, so I thought I'd visit. Family should celebrate together, right?" Her tone dripped honey, but her eyes were scanning my desk, searching for something. I motioned to the chair. "Sit." She opened her purse with deliberate care and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "Actually, I came because I've been thinking a lot about everything I've done for you. All the sacrifices, the years of raising you girls. It hasn't been easy." Something cold crept down my spine. "What are you talking about?" She unfolded the paper and slid it across my desk. "This," she said, smiling. I glanced down, typed lines, itemized, private school tuition, meals, emotional labor, and at the bottom a neat total $1,000. It wasn't a joke. I looked up. "You're asking me to pay you $1 million for being my mother?" Her smile didn't move, but her eyes hardened. "For everything I gave up, for all the things you could never repay." My breath caught. "Family doesn't work like that." "Family?" she snapped, voice suddenly sharp. "Family doesn't abandon the woman who gave them everything." I swallowed hard. "You chose to have me, Mom. Children don't owe their parents for being born." For the first time, she faltered. Then she leaned closer. Can't or won't, I could have had a life, a career, a husband who stayed. But instead, I gave it all to you." Her words echoed, but something inside me stayed still. I'd lived my life trying not to upset her. That ended here. "I'll help with your expenses," I said quietly, "but not this." Her face froze. "Then you're no longer my daughter." She stood, smoothed her jacket, and headed for the door. At the frame, she turned back. "Your father would be ashamed of what you've become." And when she left, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, alive, and mercifully final. For a long time after the door shut, I didn't move. The hum of the AC filled the silence she left behind, a sterile white noise that almost sounded like peace. Then it hit me all at once. The tremor, the disbelief, the quiet ache that felt older than my bones. I sat back in my chair and stared at that piece of paper on my desk. $1 million, an invoice for motherhood. When the tears finally came, they weren't loud. They were measured like something my body had been storing for decades, finally leaking through a crack. By morning, I wasn't crying anymore. I was done. I walked into the lab early before sunrise, before anyone else could see the wreckage on my face. The machines hummed softly, steady, and loyal. I started a new synthesis, wrote notes with the same precision I'd always had, and told myself this was how you heal, with order, with proof, with momentis. Dr. Cruz found me an hour later holding a cup of coffee. She looked at me, then at the empty space behind my eyes. "She came, didn't she?" I didn't ask how she knew. She always knew. "She wants money," I said. $1 million. Dr. Cruz didn't flinch. "And what do you want?" I thought for a long moment. "Peace," I said, "but I don't think it's refundable." That night, I sat on the bathroom floor of my office, still wearing the champagne-colored dress from the party, my hands trembling so hard I could barely breathe. The mirror across from me reflected someone calm, detached, someone I didn't recognize. The woman who built a company that saved lives was breaking quietly in the corner of her own success. I remembered every Sunday dinner where my mother said, "We do everything for you girls." Every silent ride home where I tried to believe her, every time I excused her cruelty as stress. And suddenly, I could see it for what it was, not sacrifice, but control. She gave so she could own. I texted Mark, "Don't come by tonight, I need to think." 2 days later, I met with my lawyer. I told him to create a trust for my mother enough to cover her basic needs, nothing more. Strict conditions, I said. She can't touch the principal. No withdrawals beyond the monthly stipend. He raised an eyebrow. "You're protecting her from herself," I shook my head. "I'm protecting me from her." The calls started the next week. At first, they were angry. "You'll regret this, Linda. You can't erase me." Then they turned pleading. "I forgive you, sweetheart. Just send the money so we can be family again." By the third round, they became threats. "Maybe the media should know how ungrateful you are." I stopped answering. Mark watched me one night sitting on the couch, my phone lighting up over and over. "You don't have to read them," he said. "I'm not," I told him. "I just need to see how far she'll go." Eventually, the messages slowed. The noise faded into static. And one morning, there were no more missed calls, no new emails, just quiet. That quiet felt earned. A month later, Dr. Cruz called me into her office again. "You've been working like someone's chasing you," she said softly. "Is it over?" I nodded. "Almost." She handed me an envelope. "Then take this weekend off. Go somewhere that isn't built from adrenaline." Inside was a printed ticket to a coastal retreat, a place where the lab noise would be replaced by waves. That night, I stood by my office window, city lights reflecting off the glass like distant stars. I thought of the woman who'd raised me, how she'd mistaken fear for love and guilt for loyalty. And I thought of myself finally untethered, finally breathing in a life that wasn't borrowed. The acquisition ceremony came 3 months later. Our company had been valued at $80 million. Investors, journalists, champagne, the whole illusion of triumph. I smiled for photos, shook hands, said all the right words. No one saw the small scar beneath the perfection, the space where I'd cut off the last thread of her control. After the speeches, I stepped outside for air. The night was crisp, Pacific wind sharp enough to feel like cleansing. Mark joined me, handing me a glass of water instead of champagne. "You okay?" he asked. "I am," I said. And I meant it. But peace, I've learned, doesn't stay still for long. 8 years passed. The company thrived. We built, we healed, we lived. And then one autumn morning, driving through Seattle for a conference, I saw her again. She was sitting on a curb outside a coffee shop, a paper cup in her hand, gray hair tangled, eyes dim but unmistakable. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. The world went quiet in that dangerous way it used to. I parked, bought 2 coffees, and sat beside her. She didn't recognize me at first. Then she whispered Linda like a question she was afraid to finish. We talked for an hour, half-truths, fragments, things too fragile to name. She said she was sick. Pride had taken what the world hadn't. When I left, I arranged help through the trust. Not as a daughter repaying debt, but as a human refusing cruelty. I didn't forgive her that day, but I stopped letting her story define mine. And when I drove away, the city looked softer, like it was finally letting me go. I didn't tell anyone about that meeting for a long time. Not Mark, not Dr. Cruz. It didn't feel like a secret. It felt like closure. I didn't have to perform. The following week, I got a call from the social worker overseeing her case. They said she'd accepted the help, but refused to list me as emergency contact. I almost laughed. Even at the end, she wanted the last word. I didn't fight it. Instead, I focused on the small mercies. She was safe. She had food. She wasn't on the street. The rest was no longer my job to fix. Some nights, I'd sit on my balcony looking over the city, thinking about how peace isn't loud. It doesn't roar like revenge or crash like heartbreak. It hums steady quiet like the machines in the lab that once held my world together. Dr. Cruz retired that winter. At her farewell dinner, she took my hands and said, "You've built everything you once wished someone would build for you. Don't forget to rest inside it." I promised I would try. Mark and I grew our company slowly, carefully. We created scholarships for girls in science, kids who reminded me of myself before the silence hardened. Each time I saw one of them light up over a breakthrough, something in me softened too. One morning, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name in a shaky hand. Inside, one line on plain paper. "Thank you for the coffee." No apology, no signature. And yet, it was enough. That evening, I drove to the lake near our old neighborhood. The water was still the kind of stillness that holds its breath before dawn. I whispered a goodbye no one heard and let it sink into the ripples. Freedom didn't look like victory. It looked like calm. For the first time, I understood love doesn't always heal you. Sometimes it teaches you who you must become without it. People think closure is a conversation, some neat ending where everyone hugs and cries. It's not. It's the moment you stop waiting for the apology that will never come and you live anyway. I don't hate my mother. I don't love her either. I just wish her peace somewhere far from mine. If you've ever had to build yourself from the silence your family left behind, know this. You don't owe anyone for surviving. You don't owe them your forgiveness to stay free. Share your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it. And if this story found you, stay. There's more to tell.
My name is Jean Wilson. I'm 29 years old. And the night everything cracked open didn't start with a fight. It started with a smile. It was one of those humid Saturday afternoons when the air feels too heavy to argue with. Our mutual friend Dave was hosting a small barbecue to celebrate his promotion, and I had offered to help him set up the tables and lights in his backyard. Anthony, my boyfriend of 4 years, sat slouched in a lawn chair, scrolling through his phone, sunglasses perched on his head like he was allergic to the real world. He was supposed to be helping too, but he was busy updating his story about summer vibes instead. "Hey," I called out, half teasing, half exhausted. "You could at least pretend to know how to open a bag of charcoal." He didn't look up. "I am supervising," he said, voice dry. "You're the architect. You handle the structures." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. He always said things like that, small jokes that didn't sound like jokes. I crouched by the grill, the smell of lighter fluid sharp in the air, and muttered, "Supervising requires paying attention." Dave laughed somewhere behind me. "He's allergic to labor. Jean, don't bother." I forced a laugh too, but a flicker of irritation warmed the base of my throat. That was how things often went with Anthony and me lately, me carrying the weight, him pretending the world owed him comfort. I told myself he was just stressed about work. that he'd snap out of this cynical mood once the evening got going. That's what I'd been telling myself for months. By the time the first guests arrived, the fairy lights above us glowed gold and the smell of grilled food filled the air. I felt the tension fade a little. Music hummed softly. People laughed. It was the kind of night that usually steadied me. Until she showed up. She arrived late, Jade, Dave's new coworker. She stepped into the yard like the evening had been waiting for her. Her short red hair caught the light like flame, and when she smiled, it was as if every conversation paused to make room for her. She was the opposite of me in every way, uninhibited, loud, confident, in the kind of way that didn't need permission. Anthony's head turned before mine did. He straightened up in his chair, suddenly alert, the same way a cat reacts to movement. I noticed, of course. You always notice when someone you love looks at someone else differently. She walked over to us, balancing a beer in one hand. Hey, you must be Jean, she said brightly. Dave told me you're the one with the architectural firm. That's amazing. I smiled politely. Freelance consultant, actually, but close enough. Anthony jumped in his tone a little too eager. She's being modest. She's designed a few big office renovations downtown. Jade tilted her head. Really, that's impressive. I could never do something that meticulous. I'd get bored. Anthony laughed too quickly. Yeah, she's all about structure. I'm more the spontaneous one. The comment landed between us like a small spark on dry grass. Nobody noticed it but me. Later, as the night wore on and the drinks flowed, I stood by the fence sipping ginger ale, watching Anthony animatedly tell a story to Jade. His hands moved. The way they hadn't for me in months, expressive, alive. She leaned in close, laughing, her hand brushing his arm once, twice. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was just observing, like an outsider in my own relationship. Then I heard him. He was talking to Dave, his voice casual but careless. Jean is great. Don't get me wrong, but she's so serious all the time. Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a job interview. My hand tightened around the cup. Dave muttered something I couldn't catch, but Anthony laughed. I mean, she's sweet. Just predictable. The word stung more than I wanted to admit. Predictable. Like something you could schedule between meetings. I turned back towards the grill, pretending to check on the food. I heard Jade laugh again, light and unburdened. I stayed quiet. That's what I did best. By the time the party ended, Anthony was staying behind to help clean up. I knew what that meant. He'd linger near Jade until she gave him another reason to feel seen. He offered a quick kiss on my cheek before I left. You okay to drive? I smiled faintly. Yeah, I've been okay for a while. He didn't notice the edge in my tone, or maybe he did and just didn't care. I got into my car, closed the door, and watched him through the windshield. He was laughing at something Jade said, hand resting casually on the back of her chair. I started the engine. The headlights cut across the yard, slicing through the laughter and music for just a moment. Jade looked up and waved. Anthony didn't. As I drove home, I realized something that hollowed me out from the inside. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt wanted, not just loved out of habit. The night swallowed the road ahead. The hum of the tires on asphalt sounded like breathing. By the time I reached my apartment, the air felt heavier than before. I placed my car keys on the counter and stood there in the dark, motionless. I should have cried, maybe. That's what people expect from heartbreak, the noise, the collapse. But instead, I just whispered to myself, this is how foundations crack. Not with earthquakes, just quiet pressure over time. And somewhere deep down, I knew once a crack starts, it only spreads. 2 months later, I was standing in front of a mirror that didn't feel like mine. My reflection looked fine. Hairpinned, navy dress, neat lipstick, exactly the right shade. But my eyes told the truth. They looked like someone bracing for something. Tonight was Lisa's birthday party. Anthony had insisted we go. It'll be fun, he'd said, with that careless grin that didn't reach me anymore. You've been working too much lately. In his language, working too much meant not orbiting him enough. The venue was one of those trendy loft apartments with low lights, thudding bass, and a mix of laughter and ego hanging in the air. The kind of place where people shouted compliments they didn't mean. I stood near the drink table, clutching a half-empty glass of white wine, pretending to care about a conversation with a friend I barely remembered from college. Across the room, Anthony was in his element, laughing too loudly, surrounded by people who found him funny. Jade was there too, of course. She always was lately. Her red hair caught every bit of light in that dim space like a warning signal. She leaned against a counter, eyes on Anthony, as he gestured dramatically mid-story. I didn't even have to hear it, I knew the script. Anthony telling one of his career hustle stories. the audience nodding, impressed. I took a sip of my drink and forced myself to breathe evenly. It's fine, Jean, I told myself. Just get through tonight. 20 minutes later, he still hadn't looked for me. So I crossed the room, smiling like it didn't sting. Here, I said, offering him the gin and tonic he'd asked for half an hour ago. He took it without glancing at me. Thanks, babe, he muttered automatically, still mid-conversation with Jade. Something in me went still. Jade was laughing at something Anthony had said about assertiveness in business. He grinned, turning to the group. You have to know when to take control. It's survival of the fittest out there. Exactly, Jade said, eyes glinting. It's all about that alpha energy. I almost smiled at how ridiculous they both sounded. But then Anthony looked right at me, and said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, See, Jean could use a little of that. She's brilliant, but she doesn't really fight for what she wants, you know. Always too agreeable. The words sliced cleanly like a surgeon who knew where every nerve ended. Jade's laugh filled the silence. Oh, come on, she's just chill. That's nice sometimes. But Anthony wasn't done. No, really, he continued, raising his glass. She's safe, dependable. But life's not meant to be lived at room temperature, right? The group chuckled politely. Someone shifted awkwardly. I heard my own voice before I realized I'd spoken. Room temperature keeps things from breaking. Anthony blinked, thrown off, then gave me that performative smile people wear when they're embarrassed for you. Relax, babe. I'm just joking. The laughter returned, except this time I wasn't part of it. I stood there, my pulse thrumming in my ears, my drink trembling in my hand. The music muffled the laughter distant. It was just me, him, and that terrible space between us. He looked uncomfortable now, as if realizing the crowd was watching. Jean, don't make it weird. I looked at him for a long moment. His mouth kept moving words tumbling out that I couldn't hear anymore. My chest didn't hurt. It was empty, perfectly terrifyingly empty. I placed my drink on the counter beside him, my voice calm. You're right, I said softly. I don't fight for things that don't matter anymore. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? But I was already walking away. Past Jade, whose smile faltered, past the curious stares, past the sound of my own heart slowing down. The hallway was quieter, cooler. I picked up my coat from the pile on the sofa, slipped it on, and made my way toward the door. Lisa caught my arm as I passed. Her face was apologetic, uncertain. Jean, are you okay? He didn't mean. I gave her a faint smile. It's fine. He meant exactly what he said. Then I opened the door and stepped into the night. The air outside was cold enough to bite. I didn't cry. I didn't even look back. The city hummed around me, alive and different. Inside, the laughter swelled again, the party continuing as if nothing had cracked open. But something had. And as I walked to my car, the thought came clear and clean. He wanted a woman who burned for him. Now he'd see what it felt like when she went cold. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was spilling across the bed, soft and golden, the kind of light that should have made everything feel warm. But the sheets beside me were empty cold. Anthony was in the kitchen, humming off-key while frying eggs. He looked like a man in a detergent commercial, domesticated, harmless, pretending nothing had happened. Morning, he said too casually. You were pretty quiet last night. I studied him for a moment. His back was to me, his voice steady, like the party had been a dream I'd imagined. Do you remember what you said? I asked. He glanced over his shoulder, brow furrowed. At Lisa's? Yeah, I might have gone a little overboard. But come on, Jean, you know I was just joking. Joking. The word echoed in my head like a hollow drum. He sighed, turning off the stove. You've got to stop taking everything so seriously. You embarrassed yourself walking out like that. I tilted my head, embarrassed myself. Yeah, he said like it was obvious. People were asking if we broke up or something. You made me look like a jerk. I almost laughed. You don't need help looking like a jerk, Anthony. That made him pause. Wow. Okay, you're really doing this, huh? Doing what? Being dramatic. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, wearing that half-smile that used to charm me. You always do this. You shut down instead of talking. I stared at him, realizing something devastating in its simplicity. He thought I was still trying. I'm not shutting down, I said finally. I'm done. He blinked, genuinely confused. Done with what? With you. The words came out soft, like a confession, but they carried the weight of 4 years. He laughed a dry, incredulous sound. You're kidding. I shook my head. You made it clear what you value, and it's not me. Jesus, Jean, you're overreacting. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping in. It was a party. Everyone was drinking. Everyone was joking. You can't end a 4-year relationship over one bad night. I looked around the apartment, the plants I watered, the framed prints I hung, the couch I picked. Every piece of it had been built quietly by my hands, while he took up space like it was oxygen owed to him. "It's not about one night," I said, my voice steady. "It's about every moment you made me feel small and called it teasing. Every time you needed me to hold you up but never thought to reach for me. You've been chipping away at this for years. Last night, you just said it out loud." His mouth opened, but no words came. I picked up the suitcase I'd already packed. He hadn't noticed it by the door when he came in. "You're serious?" he asked, incredulous now. I nodded. "I found a new place. I'll send for the rest of my things." He stepped forward, his tone turning sharp. "You think you're too good for me. That's what this is." I met his gaze. "No, I just think I finally see you clearly." He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Unbelievable. You're running away because your feelings got hurt. You'll regret this." Maybe I said, "But at least I'll regret it alone." I walked past him, the suitcase rolling behind me, its wheels whispering across the hardwood like punctuation marks. He didn't follow. Maybe he couldn't. The front door clicked shut behind me, and the silence that followed was so complete it felt sacred. The next few hours passed like a film in slow motion. I drove to a small furnished apartment across town. I'd found it weeks ago, an emergency backup plan that at the time I'd pretended was just in case. The space was tiny but clean. Blank walls, no memories, no trace of him. I unpacked quietly closed sketchbooks, a single photo of me and my mother that I placed on the nightstand. I left everything else boxed, like I was afraid to anchor myself too soon. Then I sat on the floor, back against the wall, knees drawn to my chest, and waited for the grief to arrive. It didn't. There were no tears, no breakdown. Just a stillness so deep it almost felt like peace. I checked my phone. 23 missed calls, 14 messages. "Anthony. You can't just ghost me after 4 years. Anthony. Are you serious about this? Anthony. I was drunk. You're really this cold, Anthony. Wow. Unbelievable. After everything I did for you. Anthony, fine. Do whatever you want." The messages kept coming, anger bleeding into guilt into pleading. I read every one of them once. Then I turned off the phone and placed it in the drawer beside the bed. When I closed that drawer, it felt final, like sealing a tomb. I made myself a cup of tea and stood by the window, watching the city lights blink in the distance. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's girlfriend. I didn't feel like someone's emotional caretaker. I just felt like me. Freedom, I realized, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it exhales. That night, I slept better than I had in months. And in the morning, when sunlight touched my face again, it didn't feel heavy. It felt like possibility. The first message came 3 days later. A new number, no name, just words that felt too familiar. Unknown. "You're really ignoring me after 4 years. Unknown. This is childish, Jean." I deleted it without replying, but the next morning there were more. Unknown. "I can't sleep. I didn't mean to hurt you. Unknown. You know I say stupid things sometimes. Unknown. Can we just talk?" They came one after another like waves against a rock that didn't move, and I didn't move. I went to work. I drafted blueprints, attended meetings, smiled when my coworkers spoke. But in the quiet moments between the hum of the printer and the whir of the AC, his voice echoed in my head. "You embarrassed yourself. You'll regret this." Funny thing is, I didn't. I found a strange kind of peace in his absence. It was like finally being able to hear my own thoughts after years of background noise. Still, I knew the cycle. I'd seen it before. The pattern of a man who mistakes attention for affection and silence for cruelty. By the end of the week, his tone had shifted. Unknown. "I can't believe you're doing this." Unknown. "You're so cold." Unknown. "I thought you were different." Then came guilt disguised as sentimentality. Unknown. "Remember that trip to Dalat? When we got caught in the rain? Unknown. You laughed so hard that day. I miss that. I miss you." I didn't respond. By the 5th day, the messages stopped. I thought maybe finally he'd run out of ways to perform regret. Then my phone rang. The caller ID said Carol Wilson, Anthony's mother. For a moment, I almost let it go to voicemail, but I answered. "Jean," she began, her voice sharp and rehearsed. "What on earth is going on between you and Anthony?" "Good afternoon, Carol," I said calmly, already knowing where this was headed. "He's devastated," she continued, voice trembling with controlled fury. "You can't just walk out on someone after 4 years without so much as a conversation. That's cruel." I took a breath. Carol, with all due respect, it's between me and your son. Well, when my son calls me crying at midnight, it becomes my concern, she snapped. He says you're punishing him, ignoring him, refusing to even meet. I'm not punishing him, I said evenly. I'm protecting my peace. She went silent for a moment. Then, you were always too proud, Jean. That's your problem. You think being cold makes you strong. I smiled faintly. No, Carol. It makes me free. Her breath caught, and for a second I thought she might scream. Instead, she exhaled sharply. You'll regret this. Men like Anthony don't just come along every day. I almost laughed at that. You're right, I said softly. Thank God for that. Then I hung up. That night I walked to the small park across from my new apartment. The air smelled like rain, the sky bruised with clouds. I sat on a bench and watched strangers walk by, couples holding hands, kids chasing a ball, someone jogging with headphones on. For once I didn't feel like a ghost. The next morning the messages started again. Different tone this time. Desperation creeping through the words. Unknown. Please, Jean, just talk to me. Unknown. I'm losing my mind. Unknown. Jade isn't who I thought she was. She's intense. Aggressive. Unknown. I made a mistake. A huge one. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd spent years craving fire. Now he was getting burned. Unknown. Please just answer. You're the only person who ever made me feel safe. That word safe used to feel like an insult. Now it sounded like a confession. I didn't reply. I didn't even read the rest. I muted the number, set my phone face down on the table, and returned to my drafting board. A new client wanted a coastal retreat designed around the theme of solitude and light. As I worked, I realized how fitting that was. I spent the entire day sketching open windows and airy spaces, places where the walls didn't suffocate. The irony made me smile. When night fell, I cooked myself dinner for one. Quiet jazz filled the apartment. My reflection in the window looked calmer, older, but somehow lighter. Later, as I washed the dishes, the phone buzzed again on the counter. One more message. Unknown. I'm sorry, I just needed to say that. For a moment, I hesitated. My finger hovered over the screen. Then I hit block. The silence that followed was immediate and perfect. I turned off the lights, sat by the window again, and whispered to myself, half prayer, half realization. Some people mistake your silence for weakness, but silence is where strength grows roots. The city lights blinked like distant stars. I let the quiet wrap around me, warm and sure. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone's apology. I was finally free to build my own peace. 3 weeks passed before I realized I hadn't thought about Anthony for days. Not tried not to think about him, simply didn't. His absence had stopped echoing. I filled the silence with small rituals. Morning coffee by the window, a walk before work, evening sketch sessions with music low in the background. My life had narrowed into something quiet and deliberate, and for the first time in years, it fit. At work, I took on a new project, a community library renovation. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt meaningful. The kind of design that gave something back instead of just showing off. And without the constant emotional noise of Anthony's demands, my mind felt sharper. Ideas flowed. When my colleague Liam Tran stopped by my desk one morning, I barely looked up from my sketches. Hey, he said, leaning on the divider. You free for the site visit this weekend? I am now, I said, smiling faintly. He grinned. Perfect. You're better company than the interns. They think measuring walls is soul-crushing. I laughed genuinely. The sound surprised me. It had been months since laughter came easily. Saturday was cool and overcast. The kind of weather that smelled like fresh concrete and wet grass, my favorite. We walked through the old library, the floorboards creaking beneath our steps. Dust floated in the air like ghosts of forgotten stories. Liam listened intently as I explained my concept. Open skylights, natural light, soft colors. You design like someone who's been rebuilding herself, he said quietly. I met his gaze. He wasn't flirting. He was seeing. Maybe I am, I admitted. There was no tension, no performance. Just the soft, respectful silence between two people who didn't need to fill it. When we left, he offered me a coffee. We ended up sitting at a street cafe until the rain came down. Talking about architecture turned into talking about life, what it means to start over, to choose peace over chaos. He didn't try to touch me, didn't ask for anything. When we parted ways, he said simply, You're easy to talk to, Jean. I went home smiling not because I felt desired, but because I felt understood. That night while cooking, I caught myself humming. A small, ordinary sound, but it startled me. It meant I was healing. I plated my dinner, sat down, and for the first time didn't glance at the empty chair across from me. It wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. Then the phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. My pulse faltered for just a second. I didn't want to look, but I did. Unknown. It's me. Please don't hang up. I stared at the screen, breath still. Then another message followed. Unknown. Jade isn't who I thought she was. She's not stable. I made a mistake. And another. Unknown. She threw something at me tonight. I'm done. I want to come home. Home. The word sent a strange chill through me. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned the phone over screen down on the table and continued eating. Each bite was slow, deliberate grounding. After dinner, I washed my plate, dried it, and tucked the phone into the drawer next to my old one. But the messages kept coming. I could feel the vibration against the wood. Unknown. Please, Jean. I need you. Unknown. You were my peace. I didn't see it before. Unknown. Please just answer me. Then, one final text. Unknown. She said I was the problem. Maybe she's right. I can't do this. I exhaled slowly, not out of fear, but out of release. For the first time, I realized I didn't need closure from him. His pain wasn't my victory, and his regret wasn't my responsibility. I opened the drawer and looked at the phone, still vibrating faintly like a trapped insect. Then I said it out loud, softly but firmly. You don't get to use me as your escape. And I turned it off. The next morning, the city felt lighter. The rain had passed. I opened the windows, brewed my coffee, and stood barefoot on the cold tiles, feeling the air rush in. In that still moment, I understood peace doesn't arrive with a grand finale. It sneaks in quietly, one breath at a time. When I sat at my desk, a new sketch waited for me, an unfinished design of an atrium filled with light. At the top, I scribbled a new note to myself. Design with clarity. Live with boundaries. I smiled, and for the first time, the foundation beneath me felt unshakable. It was early spring when the wedding invitation arrived. Lisa and Ben embossed in gold, the kind of envelope that pretends it isn't heavy with history. I almost didn't open it. Lisa was a mutual friend, and her parties had a reputation for drama, mine included. But something in me wanted to face it. Not out of revenge, not even for closure, but to prove to myself that I wasn't haunted anymore. I RSV'd yes +1. Liam smiled when I asked him to come. It's not a date, right? He teased. More like moral support, I replied. Then I'm honored, he said, his tone warm, easy. The day of the wedding was washed in soft sunlight. Rows of white chairs lined the vineyard, their shadows sharp against the green grass. The air smelled like new beginnings, ripe grapes, champagne, and something clean. As we walked in, people turned and smiled at me. The polite, curious kind of smiles that said, "You made it." Liam's hand rested gently on my arm, steady and respectful. He was calm in ways Anthony never was, no tension, no need to prove himself. When the ceremony began, I found my eyes drifting, scanning the crowd. And then I saw him. Anthony. He was standing near the back alone. His suit was too tight across the shoulders. His hair a little longer, but the arrogance that once filled every inch of him had drained away. His face looked older. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or longing, just recognition. When our eyes met, his expression fractured. He didn't expect me to look so steady. I turned back to the ceremony as the bride walked down the aisle. The reception was held inside a glass pavilion that shimmered under string lights. Music swelled, laughter echoed, and the smell of champagne hung in the air. Liam and I mingled, danced once or twice. I laughed freely, the kind of laugh that didn't need to convince anyone of anything. Then, while waiting for coffee at the bar, I felt a shadow at my side. Jean. That voice hesitant cracked. I turned. Anthony stood there, hands buried in his pockets, looking smaller somehow. His confidence had wilted into something brittle. "Hi, Anthony," I said evenly. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. "Can we talk? Just for a minute?" I nodded toward the open lobby near the entrance, bright and quiet. "Sure, there's space over there." He seemed surprised I didn't refuse. We walked there in silence. The sound of laughter faded behind us until it was just the hum of distant music and the rustle of grapevines through the glass. He spoke first. "You look good. Really good." "Thank you. I didn't think you'd come," he said. "After everything." "I almost didn't." He nodded, staring at the floor. "I guess I deserve that." There was a long pause. Then he looked up, eyes glassy. I messed up. You know that, right? I do. I thought I wanted excitement, passion, fire, but it was all noise. You were the calm I needed, and I treated it like a cage. His voice broke slightly on that last word. Jade. She wasn't what I thought. I stayed too long. I became someone I hated. I listened. The old me would have tried to comfort him, patch him, fix him. The new me just let the silence hold his confession. He stepped closer. I never stopped thinking about you. Every time I close my eyes, I hear your voice. You were home. Home, I repeated softly. That's what you called me when it was convenient. But homes aren't built for people who keep setting fires inside them. He winced. I'm not proud of what I did, he said, but I've changed. I swear I have. Before I could answer, I saw movement from the corner of my eye. Liam had walked up holding 2 glasses of champagne. He looked between us, but didn't interrupt. Anthony followed my gaze, his jaw tightening. So this is him. Yes, I said. This is Liam. He gave a stiff laugh. You moved on fast. I smiled faintly. Healing isn't about speed, Anthony. It's about direction. That silence again. Sharp and heavy. He looked desperate now, his composure cracking. You're really choosing him over me. I shook my head. No, I'm choosing me. The words landed like a quiet verdict. Final. Anthony blinked, disbelief giving way to something else, loss maybe. The kind that's too late to undo. He whispered, I never thought you'd stop loving me. I didn't stop, I said. I just stopped waiting for you to deserve it. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then almost mechanically, he nodded and walked away. I watched him go, not triumphantly, not regretfully, just peacefully. Liam handed me the champagne. You okay? I smiled. Better than I've been in years. We walked back into the reception together. The music swelled again, soft, timeless. I looked around at the lights, the laughter, the reflection of glass, catching the sunset. Anthony had once been the center of my world. Now he was just part of its background noise. Liam leaned in slightly. What are you thinking about? I glanced at him, then back toward the door where Anthony had vanished. About how sometimes I said the most powerful thing you can do is walk away quietly. He smiled. Sounds like an architect's kind of wisdom. I laughed this time freely, genuinely. Outside, the vineyard. Lights shimmered, and the night air felt alive again. When we left later, Liam held the door open for me. I stepped out into the cool air and took one last deep breath of freedom. Behind me, the faint sound of music drifted out into the dark, carrying no weight anymore. Ahead, the road stretched open under the stars. And for the first time in years, I didn't look back. I heard him whisper her name before I ever knew she existed. That was the night everything started to crumble, though I didn't realize it yet. He was standing on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear, laughing softly. The kind of laugh people reserve for someone who still makes them feel young. The rain outside blurred the glass, but I could still make out the words that pierced right through me, Dana. You always knew how to make me feel alive. Alive. Funny how one word can sound like a promise and a goodbye all at once. My name is Teresa Johnson, and I'm 29 years old. If you had met me 2 years ago, you would have said I was the kind of woman who had her life together, steady job, a cozy apartment, a boyfriend who remembered my coffee order and texted me good morning. Back then, I thought that was all that love needed to survive. Consistency, honesty, small kindnesses. That boyfriend was James, a marketing consultant with a perfect smile and a restless soul. When we met, he said he was done with drama, that he wanted someone real. I took that to mean me. At first, we were inseparable. He'd tell his friends Teresa's the kind of woman who makes you want to do better. We'd cook pasta on Friday nights, fall asleep to crime documentaries, and plan imaginary trips we never took. He said he loved that I was grounded, that I made him feel safe. But safety has a strange way of turning into boredom for people who need constant applause. It started with little comments. You don't dress up like you used to. You always order the same thing. I just miss when everything felt exciting. I laughed it off, thinking he was joking. Then one evening, while we were watching a movie, one of those romantic ones, where the guy surprises his girlfriend with a trip to Paris, James leaned back, smirked, and said, "See that? That's how a man should make his woman feel like a queen." I smiled faintly and said, "Queens still need rent paid, James." He laughed, but something about the way his eyes lingered on the screen made my stomach twist. From that night on, I started losing him piece by piece. He began spending more time on his phone, scrolling through perfectly filtered lives online. His Instagram turned into a stage, shirtless gym photos, captions about knowing your worth, and comments from women I'd never heard of. When I asked who they were, he'd say, "Just friends, Teresa. You're being paranoid." Paranoid. That word became his shield, and my silence became my prison. He started coming home later, smelling like cologne I didn't recognize, humming songs he used to hate. One night, when his phone buzzed on the counter, I glanced down not to snoop, just out of reflex. The name on the screen glowed like a warning Dana. When he walked in and saw me looking, he didn't flinch. "Oh, that," he said casually. "Just an old friend." "Your ex?" I asked quietly. He sighed like I was a child interrupting him. "Teresa, please, don't start." That was the moment I realized how easy it is for love to sound like guilt when someone stops meaning what they say. That night I couldn't sleep. The glow of his phone screen kept flickering in the dark, lighting up his face while he smiled at something I wasn't allowed to see. And for the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel like his partner. I felt like his audience, and I was watching the show end without knowing when the curtain fell. The first thing to disappear wasn't his affection. It was his attention. James started treating our relationship like a photo shoot, perfectly curated, when people were watching completely hollow when they weren't. He became obsessed with appearances, new clothes, gym selfies, and captions like, "Real men don't chase, they attract." Every time he posted one of those, I could feel something in me tighten, a quiet panic I tried to swallow with logic. He's just confident, I told myself. He's growing. But deep down, I knew he wasn't growing, he was performing. Our dinners turned into silence. He'd sit across from me, scrolling on his phone, barely touching his food. When I'd ask about his day, he'd give one-word answers, then turn the question back on me with practiced politeness. One Friday night, I decided to make things special. I lit candles, cooked his favorite meal, even wore the red dress he once said made me look dangerous. He came home late, smelling faintly of whiskey, tossed his jacket on the chair, and said, "Wow, what's all this?" "I thought we could have dinner." I smiled. He looked at the table, then back at his phone. "Can we eat later?" I promised Dana I'd help her with something. The sound of that name was a blade, sharp and soft at the same time. "Since when are you helping her?" I asked. He looked up finally, his tone flat. "Don't do that, Teresa. You're making this weird." That night, the food went cold, the candles burned out, and I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, while he laughed quietly on the balcony. From that moment, everything felt rehearsed. He'd post photos of sunsets with captions like, "Know your worth, kings." He started calling himself king, ironically, but irony has a way of turning into truth when you say it enough times. When I tried to talk about how distant he'd become, he said, "You're overanalyzing everything. Not everything has to be deep, Teresa. But love is supposed to be deep. It's supposed to have roots. What we had now felt like painted soil." Weeks passed. The gap between us grew so wide I could hear the echo of my own voice when I tried to reach him. One night I came home early and found him sitting in the dark typing fast on his phone, his face lit by the screen, his smile tender. The kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. "Who's that?" I asked gently. He jumped slightly, then forced a grin. "No one. Dana." He rolled his eyes. "You really don't trust me, do you?" "I used to," I said softly. He stood up, then running a hand through his hair like a man exhausted by being accused of his own truth. "I can't do this, Teresa. I can't keep explaining myself every time I text someone. You're suffocating me." "Then stop hiding," I whispered. That made him laugh low and cruel. "You think everything's a mystery. Sometimes people just get bored." I stared at him, trying to find the man who once promised me peace, but all I saw was someone addicted to attention, to being admired, wanted, envied. That night, as he showered, I stood by the bathroom door and listened to the running water, the scent of his cologne mixed with the sound of his laughter echoing from earlier calls. That's when it hit me. I wasn't losing him. He'd already left. He just hadn't told me yet. It ended quietly. No screaming, no throwing things, no tears. Just one final sentence that hung between us like smoke. "You make me feel small, Teresa." I remember blinking at him, trying to understand. "Small James, all I've ever done is support you." He sighed, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair. "That's the problem. You make everything so steady, predictable. I need passion, not peace." I stood there frozen, a takeout bag still in my hands. I had come home early to surprise him. Turns out he had his own surprise waiting, a breakup speech rehearsed down to the tone. I didn't fight. I didn't beg. I just placed the bag on the counter and said quietly, "Then go, rule your kingdom." He stared at me, startled, maybe expecting drama. Instead, I gave him calm, and calm was something he couldn't perform against. He left that night with his suitcase and his phone buzzing nonstop. By morning, his social media was filled with new posts, a mirror selfie captioned, "King energy only." And there she was, Dana appearing in his tagged photos again, smiling, radiant, dangerous. Mutual friends started sending screenshots. "Teresa, have you seen this? He looks happy. Are you okay?" I muted everything. I deleted his number. But silence has a sound, a low, aching hum that follows you into every room. For weeks, I moved through life like a ghost. I still made coffee for 2 out of habit, still looked at my phone expecting his name to appear. But all that ever came were notifications I refused to open. Then something strange happened. The quiet stopped hurting. I started noticing small things again. The warmth of sunlight on my hands. While I worked, the sound of rain against my window, the way peace. Real peace doesn't ask to be seen. I went to work early, stayed late. My boss noticed. "You seem focused lately," he said. I finally stopped multitasking my heartbreak, I joked. Within months, I was promoted. I joined a gym, picked up painting. Again, even went on a weekend trip alone, my first solo vacation ever. For the first time, my reflection didn't look lonely. It looked alive. But life has a way of testing you right when you start to heal. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hey, it's me. I hope you don't hate me." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then another text came. "I miss how easy things were with you." I didn't reply. The old Teresa would have wanted closure. But the new me understood something she never did before. Sometimes silence is the closure. Still that night, as I sat on my balcony with the city glowing below, I whispered softly to no one. "You wanted to feel like a King James. I just wanted to feel seen." And somewhere out there, I imagined him scrolling through his phone, the man who once craved an audience, realizing that not everyone would keep watching his show. It had been 3 months since James walked out of my life. Long enough for his ghost to fade, but not long enough for the memory to lose its voice. I was finally getting used to the quiet again, until fate decided to test my peace in the most unexpected way. That Friday evening, I stopped by a cafe near my office after work. The place was packed, the smell of roasted beans and rain-soaked pavement mixing in the air. I stood in line, half distracted, scrolling through my phone until I heard it. That laugh. Light, confident, rehearsed. I would have known it anywhere. I turned my head slowly. There he was, James, sitting by the window phone in one hand, the other resting lazily beside the woman across from him, Dana. For a moment, my heart forgot how to beat. He looked different, tired around the eyes, posture slouched slightly. The man who once demanded to be seen now looked like he'd been performing too long without applause. Dana, on the other hand, was scrolling through her phone, not even looking at him. Her laugh came late, polite, distracted. He tried to make her laugh again, louder this time, but she only smiled faintly. That's when he looked up and saw me. His expression froze, that trademark confidence flickering into something small, regret. "Maybe Teresa," he said, standing abruptly. "Wow, it's been forever." "Hey," I said evenly. "Didn't expect to see you here." He brushed a hand through his hair, the same nervous tick he had when he used to lie. "You look good." "So do you?" I lied. Dana looked up, finally curious. Her eyes darted between us, then back to her phone. James shifted awkwardly. "Can we talk sometime, just to catch up?" I glanced at her, then back at him. "I don't think that's a good idea." His smile faltered. "Right, of course." I ordered my coffee, paid, and walked out. But as I turned back through the window, I caught him watching me go, that same look people get when they realize the story moved on without them. That night, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "I'm sorry, Teresa, for everything. Can we please talk?" I stared at the message for a full minute before locking the screen. 2 days later, another text arrived. "I made a mistake. Dana's not who I thought she was. I just want to explain." I ignored it. But then came the letter taped to my apartment door, written in his familiar, messy handwriting. "I know you don't want to see me, but please, just 5 minutes. I need to tell you something face to face." I should have thrown it away. But curiosity, or maybe the last ember of closure, got the better of me. So the next evening, I found myself walking toward the park near our old apartment. The sky was bruised purple, the streetlights just starting to hum to life. He was already there, sitting on the bench, hood pulled up, hands shoved in his pockets. When he looked up, I saw a version of him I hadn't seen before, stripped of pride, of polish, of performance. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. I nodded once. "You wanted 5 minutes." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. I messed up, Teresa. You were right about everything. And just like that, the stage was set, only this time the script was mine to write. The park was nearly empty that night. Just the hum of distant traffic and the whisper of leaves scraping across the pavement. The air smelled like rain, heavy and metallic, the kind that comes right before a storm. James stood slowly when he saw me, his eyes red around the edges like he hadn't slept in days. He looked nothing like the man who left me for his queen. No suit, no cologne, no confidence, just exhaustion. I don't even know where to start, he said quietly. Try the truth, I replied. He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. Dana, she wasn't what I thought. At first it was fun, she made me feel wanted again. But then everything became about her. Her image, her followers, her plans. She used me, Teresa, for money, attention, everything. When I ran out, she ran too. I stayed silent. The old me would have asked why, how, what happened. But now I just let the silence make him uncomfortable. He took a shaky breath. You were right, about everything. I thought I needed passion, chaos, fire. But I didn't realize how cold it gets when all the flames burn out. I finally met his eyes. So what do you want from me, James? He hesitated. A second chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I cut him off. You don't. He flinched. I don't hate you, I continued, but I don't need to start over with someone who made me feel small so he could feel big. Teresa, I was stupid. I thought stability meant boredom. But you were peace. I see that now. You see it because you lost it, I said softly. You didn't want a partner, James. You wanted a mirror, something that reflected your best angle back at you. He swallowed hard, tears welling. You make it sound like I'm a terrible person. I shook my head. No, you're just someone who confuses attention for love. He took a step forward. Please, Teresa, I miss you. I miss us. We can rebuild. I stepped back. You don't miss me. You miss the version of yourself you liked when I loved you. The words hit him like glass. His shoulders slumped, the last bit of pride draining from his face. He whispered, I'm sorry. And for the first time, I believed him. But I also knew something he didn't. Apologies don't rebuild what someone chose to burn. I looked at him one last time and said, You wanted a Queen, James, but I was never meant to sit beside a king. I was meant to build my own crown. I turned and walked away, my heels clicking softly against the wet pavement. Behind me, I could still hear him whisper, Teresa, but I didn't look back. By the time I reached the edge of the park, the rain had started, thin silver streaks falling like applause from the sky. And for the first time, it didn't sound like grief. It sounded like freedom. 6 months later, James was nothing more than a ghost of a chapter I'd already closed. Life had fallen into a rhythm that finally made sense again. Calm mornings, coffee and silence. Weekends, painting by the window. No longer waiting for someone to text back. I thought I'd reached the final act of our story, but life has a strange sense of irony. One Monday morning, I received an email from HR. New project coordinator, joining your department this quarter. Please review her onboarding schedule. I opened the attached file, scanning the details, and then I froze. Name James Porter. I laughed out loud, that low, disbelieving laugh you give when the universe clearly has a sense of humor. The following week, he walked into the glass-walled office looking smaller somehow. His once effortless confidence was gone. His eyes met mine across the conference table, startled, uncertain. Teresa, he breathed almost a whisper. Good morning, I said evenly. Orientation starts at 9. You'll be working with my team. I saw the flicker of panic in his face. Maybe he'd expected anger. Maybe he'd expected tears. But indifference. That was something he never rehearsed for. Days turned into weeks. We barely spoke except for professional matters. He was polite, painfully so. Always careful, always measured. The other employees said he seemed off. He's nice, one intern said to me, but sad. Like he's somewhere else all the time. I didn't respond. Some lessons don't need explanations. Then, one evening, after a long meeting, he caught me in the hallway. Teresa, he called softly. Can we talk? I checked my watch. Make it quick. He took a deep breath. I know this must be weird for you. It's weird for me too. But I wanted to say I'm sorry again for everything. Before, when I apologized, I just wanted to ease my guilt. But now I actually mean it. I kept my tone calm. You already did, James. I accepted it. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. Working here, seeing how good you are at what you do. It's humbling. You're thriving. It's hard to watch, but I'm proud of you. I looked him straight in the eyes. You don't owe me pride, and I don't owe you forgiveness. We're just coworkers now. Something in him broke then. Not loudly, not visibly, but quietly, like the sound of glass cracking under a thick rug. He nodded again. Okay, he whispered, then walked away. A few weeks later, my boss called me into his office. We're restructuring, he said. Budget cuts. The temporary coordinator position has to go. He hesitated, eyes apologetic. Since you're technically his supervisor, I'd like you to sit in on the exit meeting. I think he'll take it better hearing it from someone familiar. I agreed, not out of sympathy, out of closure. The next morning, James sat across from HR, clutching his folder. He didn't argue, didn't beg. He just nodded, eyes wet, and when it was over, he stood, turned to me, and said softly, "Thank you for not being cruel." "Take care of yourself, James," I said. He gave me a faint, trembling smile. "You too, Teresa." And just like that, he was gone. A month later, a mutual friend mentioned he'd moved back in with his parents. "Apparently Dana left him in debt," she said quietly. "He's working part-time now." I didn't feel joy, not even revenge, just closure. Because real revenge isn't watching someone fall. It's standing tall while they fade quietly into the background. Almost a year to the day after he left, I got a message on LinkedIn. "Hey, Teresa, just wanted to say congratulations on everything you've accomplished. You deserve it. I'm proud of you." I hovered over the reply box for a long time, then typed back, "Thank you, James. I wish you well." That night, I sat on my balcony, tea steaming in my hands, watching the city glow like gold dust below me. The air felt cleaner somehow, like my lungs had finally caught up with my freedom. He wanted to be a king, but I was never meant to stand beside one. I was meant to build my own kingdom, brick by brick, silence by silence, truth by truth. And this time I ruled alone, peacefully, beautifully, completely.